Well, I think perhaps we can slowly start while still a few people join. The topic is clear today. We're going to talk about all the social media trends defining the last couple of months, and we're going to try to look a little bit into where the trends are headed. And to do that, we have a couple of panelists that I'd like to introduce everyone to. But before we get there, and maybe the panelists, you can already kind of come onto the discussion and just turn on your webcams. But one thing I recommend everyone doing while we're here is to register for the Socialbakers Engage Global event happening November 18th, 20th. It's going to be a pretty cool event that looks at everything to do with social media, to do with customer experiences, to do with digital marketing, and we have pretty cool lineup of speakers there. So you're going to see all the speakers when you scan the QR code. So register to that. And to introduce and here I by accident clicked on the event. So give me just a second to return to the presentation. All right. So we have a couple of panelists. Me, myself, I'm Mantis, head of the content team at Socialbakers. And maybe Amelie, next, if you could introduce yourself to the panel, to the webinar.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Amelie. I'm located in wintry Prague. And I'm part of the product marketing team, making sure that our product message is aligned across the whole organization.
And then we have Max joining us from Singapore.
Hi, guys. My name is Max. I'm the customer program manager for Socialbakers in APAC, based out of Singapore. And I'm joining Mantas and Amelie today to give like a APAC perspective to the trends that we're going to see in a few minutes. So hi, everyone.
That's awesome, because we do really have a lot of webinar attendees coming from your part of the world. So I'm glad we have you here on board with us. So jumping next, maybe Amelie, could you take us through a little bit of what we're going to cover today?
Sure. So it's the agenda today will be split into 3 different parts. So first, we're going to talk about the advertising spend and really trying to understand where and on which platforms, in which formats the money is being spent in the last few months. Then we're going to jump onto organic engagement to understand how consumer behavior shifted, maybe how online behavior shifted, and the trends that we can see marketers are prioritizing at the moment. And to wrap things off, we're going to have a look at influencer marketing and the overarching trends in that space.
Perfect. I think maybe I skipped a slide. I just wanted to again remind everyone to, if you can switch when you're participating in the chat, that you're responding to all panelists and attendees, and also feel free to drop in questions all throughout this presentation. We'll answer them right away, or use the Q&A panel as well. So we'll answer them no matter where you ask the question. So Amelie, thanks for walking us through the agenda. And maybe to start off, you can start us off with a poll.
Yeah, let us know. We would really like to understand how your results were in the last 3 months. Did your results generally pick up? Are you in green numbers? So text us an A in the chat. Was it kind of still slower than expected, then sent a B? Or are you still trying to figure it out amongst the whole pandemic and things changing all the time, the second wave being there and all that? I'd like to understand your point. But maybe, I don't know, Mentos, how was it for us, Socialbakers?
Right. I like that a lot of people are responding. See, we're still trying to figure it out. Yeah, sometimes with data, especially if it's kind of a turbulent year a little bit, it's difficult to tell what's working and what's not. For us, I would say it was, you kind of have these summer months where you usually have the trend of a little bit slowing down, a little bit kind of quieter months in our industry. And then you really expect the Q3, to punch through the roof. But this year, because 2020 was so crazy, no one knew what's going to happen. But we kind of had a sigh of relief when we saw that the numbers were pretty good for us in Q3, and we did have engagement and traffic pick up. Curious, actually, Max, what about the clients that you speak to in the region?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Q2 for our region was when like everything went crazy, right? I think obviously with the pandemic, we've been one of the first regions to be hit by the pandemic. So the I would say the panic started earlier, but probably the recovery as well. So while Q2 was kind of all over the place, Q3 was where we see the activity starting to pick up for most of the clients that we work with. Of course, there's some difference based on verticals, and I think you have a few insight on that a bit later. But yeah, obviously Q3 is still slower than expected, but we're definitely seeing an upward trend.
Yeah,
But kind of like all three apply, right? For a lot of businesses. Like even if it's good, you're still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, you're still certainly catching up to where you expected to be, back in 2019, where you thought you were going to be in 2020. So you're definitely catching up in that regard. So a lot of the numbers that were shared today will, I think, tell the full story of where marketers kind of fell in this quarter and where they succeeded. So maybe to start with, one of the most important metrics that we follow is the overall spend across different regions. And I think what Q3 showed is that there was really a nice bounce back in the market, and actually almost every market. Max, anything to add here for your region? And Amelie, feel free to jump in too, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And we see that we've seen a drop from now. You can clearly, like, maybe if I can bring the attention of the people on the call, Southeast Asia, where I'm usually talking to clients, where the clients are from, I'm talking to are from, you can see a clear dip on the green line in March and April. That's kind of like the panic I mentioned. But you can also see that starting from Q3, it really starts to pick up again. And I don't have maybe that's the number that you have on the slide there, but the 2020 in September, the 2020 numbers in terms of spends are actually higher than the same time last year. So people trying, my guess is that people are trying to catch up for that crazy quarter that we had before.
Yeah. Isn't that certainly going to be the case for the rest of 2020? Is that for many businesses is going to be a year to kind of get the quarter to catch up and close the year sort of above? You had such a slow kind of Q2 maybe in comparison that you really were, expecting that, look, this last part of the year is going to have to be crucial in terms of picking up business. Amelie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting as well. I mean, we can clearly see the kind of like dip in the end of Q2, which was probably related to the Facebook ad boycott. But then, to be honest, kind of like it just went up straight. So it seemed like all the brands were sitting on the budget and then just kind of suddenly releasing it again. So even though we've seen that dip over there as well, it was picking up very quickly again. So that's quite interesting as well.
Yeah, it's. I think all of us marketers have just waited for this confirmation that, look, people aren't afraid to spend in advertising, and I think Q3 really proved it. Anything kind of curious when you look at the industries? Of course, accommodation still sort of flatlining for a while now, and for obvious reasons. But I found it kind of optimistic to see other regions bounce back, other industries bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, especially e-commerce, right? It's just on a rise. It's not going to stop, it looks like.
Yeah, that's one thing that really changed during the course of this year, is just our reliance on e-commerce. And it also isn't just our reliance, like that's what platforms did as well. Facebook and Instagram really made it much easier for people to purchase things directly in the app. And of course, with the release of Facebook shops, I think there's a lot of push for people to start kind of adopting online behaviors of purchasing things online. And maybe some of them weren't actually doing that before the pandemic, and now they are. And so I expect this to increase further in the next quarters.
Definitely for Q4. I know it's probably the case all around the world, but here in Southeast Asia, you get your 10-10, your 11-11, your 12-12 Christmas season, like the festive season. So definitely the trend for e-commerce probably not going to slow down in Q4, probably dip a bit in Q1, as like everyone is taking a break from buying things, I guess. Yeah, that at least for e-commerce, and I would say for the main industry as well, probably not gonna slow down in Q4.
Yeah, I guess also in a lot of countries where brick and mortar stores are even like closed due to the pandemic. I can imagine even a lot more people are now inclined to shop for Christmas gifts online as well.
Right, like with all of Europe pretty much at the moment.
Mm.
This chart is very promising to me. I think it's just like 2020 is known to be just a tragic year for the world, and there's a lot of pessimism around marketing and so forth. But I think this chart gives me some sense of optimism when you look at a digital social media, or rather Facebook and Instagram spending. How do you guys feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, like it's very nice to see that there is some sort of like stability, right? And it seems like marketers, even though obviously there was some uncertainty in March and April specifically, where we can see the drop really being below 2019 levels, is really picking up again, which is very optimistic, as you said. Very nice to see.
Yeah, I would say that obviously there's some, again, catching up to do, like this moment of everyone froze, and then when it starts to pick up again, there was some catching up to do. But also because we're looking specifically at social media here, and that's the main, I mean, it was already probably the main place where brands can connect with their audience before, but this year made it even stronger. So social media became an even stronger platform to reach your audience as a marketer. So I'm actually not surprised to see that trend. What surprised me is the proportion of the upward trends coming to Q3.
Yeah, and it's all will kind of be defined with how the last quarter closes, because it's the quarter where brands really spend like crazy to promote the holiday campaigns. Of course, with the increasing ad spend comes increasing ad costs. So there's more competition in the market, and it's kind of somewhat like a sign of a healthier, more competitive market. Still something to take into account is that it's still lower. The costs are still lower than what they were in Q3 2019, which is interesting. It just means probably people are spending a bit more time on social media. There's more eyeballs and more ad space. Anything that strikes you unusual here?
No, I would say that I guess that's still an opportunity, right? Because when we show the trends of the spend going up, like usually marketers start to like say, okay, let's rethink this because it's going to become really expensive. But I would say there's still an opportunity to advertise on social media at the moment, as in the majority of the case, advertising is still cheaper than what it was last year. So let's see how it goes, considering like the upward trends that we've seen leading into Q4, but at the end of Q3, there was definitely an opportunity to advertise for cheaper than last year.
Yeah, and there's later data in this webinar that looks into where that spend is going, so that's going to be quite interesting. So just hold on a second. Of course, it's all reflected in Facebook revenue. So again, it was an important quarter for Facebook. I think everyone was really looking to see what will happen. Amelie, you mentioned the ad boycotts. Like, how is that going to affect Facebook's revenue? And actually, it didn't
not too much, right?
so much. They had a kind of a record revenue quarter, grew 22%. And they are expected to still grow. I think that's what they said in Q4 in terms of revenue. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, so that's surprising, right? Even though everyone was really like dooming the end of Facebook almost, it really doesn't seem to have impacted Facebook that much. And it's curious to consider as well, is part of that due to the pandemic and people spending more time online, or what are the reasons for that? But
yeah. Where's spend going? So I mentioned that earlier, and it is going actually interestingly away from the feeds, the main feeds. So Facebook feed decreased, Instagram feed decreased slightly, and other placements increased. So maybe we'll discuss that in a second. So we actually, for this specific webinar, we looked at all the different placements that exist and how much space they actually take up in terms of the total budget of what brands spend. And of course, yes, while most of it is still on the main feeds, it's interesting to see how other placements are growing. So like Instagram stories, and especially Instagram Explore is an interesting one that was introduced, I think, 2 quarters ago. I don't remember
Yeah, I think
exactly.
a year ago almost.
A year
now.
ago.
Yeah.
So it grew, I think, 2.6% in terms of spend. And it's really kind of rare for new placements to jump up quickly into the top positions. But I think, to me, it just shows how important maybe Instagram is for marketers. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, increasingly so. As you said, we really have Instagram picking up very strongly. Whereas Facebook used to be the one place to spend your social budget. Instagram is really picking up, and I mean, the question is as well with new formats being introduced, like Reels, for example. We can imagine that this is an IGTV even as well, becoming more and more important in the Instagram strategy in general.
Yeah, there's still no Instagram Reels ad placement. I'm just, is it going to happen next quarter? Is it going to happen 2021? But I think it just when you look at data, you see how marketers are really looking for more ad space on Instagram, and Instagram currently doesn't offer that much ad space. If you look at the kind of the placement space where you can advertise, it's mostly on Facebook now, like 70% maybe of placements. So it'd be great, I think, for marketers.
How is that in your like from your experience, Max? I'd be curious.
Yeah, I was going to say, like in Southeast Asia, what we've seen is that maybe contrary to Europe, where you see that over like pink trend of Instagram kind of taking over. What we're seeing is that, of course, Instagram is becoming a bigger trend, like for the past 2 years in Southeast Asia, but we're still seeing some clear differences based on the market. So we're seeing markets like Indonesia, for example, where Instagram is very, very strong. And then marketers, because they're more used to that platform, are more keen to like promote their content on Instagram as well. When you go to markets such as the Philippines or Vietnam, Facebook, it's still the main platform in terms of what the marketers are using, what the brands are using, but also what the audiences are using in their day-to-day life, whether it's to communicate, talk to brand, or like look for products. So I would say, yeah, it's Instagram is definitely growing as a whole, but we've seen some clear differences in the different markets that we work with.
Yeah,
you have a good point coming in here as well from Gabriel, who says that I feel Q4, when all the campaigns are running for the festive season, will pick up even more. More ads will be going towards Instagram stories, and that he said that you can already see that it's coming close to the Instagram feed. So yeah, that would be curious as well to see how stories will evolve compared to the feed.
Yeah, and a couple of more comments that are worthwhile mentioning here. So we have 2 questions. So one about Thailand and one about Japan. What's the kind of the Instagram penetration there, or what's the division of ad placement? So we can actually get you that data after the webinar. If anyone needs region-specific data, I think Max would be able to help you
definitely
out for your region.
Yeah, we have a lot of we create like a quarterly report, and we have a lot of insights based on the different. We can break it down by market, or by country, or industry. We're more than happy to have that chat after this webinar. So just drop us a note, and we can take that offline.
And questions about TikTok. Of course, everyone really wants to know where does TikTok fall in all this advertising space. So actually, a really good place to learn about TikTok will be the Socialbakers Engage Global. We have someone from TikTok speaking there, and we specifically asked them to bring data about TikTok, because people are really asking for more data and more insights about the TikTok platform. So it's a really practical conversation that is going to come from Oliver Silser from TikTok. So join Socialbakers Engage Global. All right. Let's just a pointer. What are Explore ads? So I rarely see them, but they are. Are you guys Instagram users, Amelie and Max? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Guilty pleasure.
So I'm more of a Facebook person. I'm pretty old school. I'm sorry. But the Instagram Explore ads, just that they come on, they're kind of come in your Instagram discovery section, and it's a kind of a new way for people to maybe discover your brand when they're in that mode of looking for new content. This is interesting. This is another kind of one of those small data points that for me gives me a lot of personally optimism, and it's especially the lower chart, the click-through chart. So there's a lot of fluctuation that happened in 2020 in terms of spend, in terms of cost to advertise, and I would have expected that also to somehow affect click-through, but click-through remains usually quite stable. And to me as a marketer personally, then what this tells me is that I can be confident to spend even if there are if the market is a little bit turbulent. Any additional takeaways from this slide?
Yeah, I would say like you mentioned, basically is that it's encouraging to see that it's because it is getting it got cheaper now. It got pretty much the way it was before, but basically the engagement of the audience with the advertising on Facebook and Instagram hasn't dropped, right? It's not at least it's not because it doesn't work that it got cheaper. The audience is still there and still reactive towards like this kind of advertising. So like you say, very positive sign there.
Yeah, even despite the cost per click sort of fluctuating, but cost per click actually decreased differently on kind of different placements. So we're going to get to that in a second. Interesting to see Facebook feed and Instagram feed decrease in costs while other placements kind of growing a little bit. I think it just echoes what maybe a lot of people are expressing in the chat, where, Instagram stories becoming more of a place where you choose to advertise, and especially for the holiday season, where you're looking to reach bigger audiences through awareness marketing. Anything else?
I think what's interesting as well is to see that even though most of the other formats are decreasing, but in-stream video is really increasing. So yeah, we can really see that that shift as well.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. Mentas as a marketer, maybe like as Socialbakers, do we use in-stream videos? I find that format, I don't know, sometimes a bit intrusive, or it could be a bit disturbing when you're trying to watch videos. But if we're seeing the cost increase, right, it's probably that more people are using it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's that more people are using it, but it also could be because of the algorithm that's kind of choosing where to show your ads. So for instance, if you are maybe leaving your advertising campaigns to be optimized by the algorithm itself, as opposed to you don't choose, like I just want my ads to be shown on the feed or stories, then it's likely that the Facebook algorithm will choose to show it where it has the best effect. And strangely, it seems like in-stream video is one of those places. We actually have stats in the next page showing just the click-through differences between different formats. And again, in-stream video having better click-through than like Instagram feed or Instagram stories, it's really surprising. It's counterintuitive for me.
Yeah.
We have a good question there coming in from the audience as well. So why revenue of Facebook increased significantly in Q3 2020, but CPC is kind of cheaper than 2019? Mentas, do you have some
really
insights there maybe?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the fact that people's time spent perhaps increased slightly, and people are more willing to interact with that. So maybe behaviors online actually change. So if you think of maybe 2019, maybe some people were still kind of more inclined to go to their brick and mortar store to get something, or they were like kind of window shopping. They would leave their home to do that. I think right now that's maybe happening on the platform itself. And so there's more kind of eyeballs there for advertising. And that's one hypothesis, but it could be correct. And
yeah,
we have more questions.
We have one more from Shirlene. Do we have any benchmarks for CPC? So is there any kind of like, this is what you should go for?
Well, that will really depend on what you're selling and what the objective is. So if you're
in what market and what,
luckily we do have benchmarks available for whatever industry you're in and whatever region. So again, Max, you're gonna have to reach out to Shirley and get those benchmarks to her. But let us know what industry you're from and where, and we'll get you the benchmarks. Okay. So where were we? Yes, the cost to advertise. For me, it's always surprising just to see the click-through rate between the difference between Facebook feed and just Instagram feed and Instagram stories. I think we just spoke how integral Instagram is to marketing and how it's growing, but still, like, Facebook is such a platform to drive action. Like, if you need people to take a step off the platform and into your website, your Facebook is where it's still going to be cheapest. And by the way, if you recall previous slide, to advertise on the Instagram feed and Facebook feed actually decreased. So that's an opportunity. Ad reach. This is a kind of an important slide. I think it answers maybe some of the questions that people had earlier about why did the cost decrease. So if reach is increasing, essentially cost is decreasing. But for me, surprising how much it has increased in some of the regions, like North America. But Max, your region, it's a bit more stable than others. Why could that be?
Yeah, actually, like we talked about that yesterday, and I couldn't quite figure it out, right? Because we see that everything started to increase again after Q3, and we've seen like an increase in spend. And we saw that the CPC and the CPM were kind of stable. So to me, the reach should have increased significantly as well, but it hasn't been the case. So that'll be interesting to do a bit more digging on that one, to be honest, because I can't really explain why, except especially in Southeast Asia compared to the other regions, kind of like stay stable overall throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, it compared to the other regions from what we've seen in the previous chart, there was also a bit less of a dramatic fluctuation in terms of spend as well. Like there's some regions like North America or south of Europe where spend just really almost topped in the beginning of March, where I think maybe we didn't quite see that in Southeast Asia as much.
Yeah, maybe.
But I overall, it's nice to see that there's more and more reach on Facebook for advertisers, which should keep the costs down as long as that reach keeps increasing.
Yeah, we have one question coming in from the audience from Fong. Does privacy policy affect Facebook ads reach, especially since iOS 14 launched?
Yeah, that's really a good question. How do security kind of efforts from your devices and so forth affect Facebook advertising? And there've been in the past a lot of efforts from different companies to introduce some kind of ad blockers for the Facebook platform, for the Facebook app, but so far it's been proving pretty difficult in the past. From what I remember, like someone would create an ad blocker for Facebook and it'd be like a week or two, and the Facebook would figure out how to fix it. I don't know what happened with the iOS 14 launch, so it's a really, really interesting question. I would imagine Facebook is also aware of the restrictions, but I haven't picked up anything online about this being an issue.
Yeah, I also haven't. It would be curious as well to see how it will evolve. So maybe in the next after the next quarter, you'll be able to see if it would have had an impact.
I personally don't know if it has an immediate effect on the Facebook ads, but I'm really curious to learn, so I will read about this later. Visali has a not ad related question, but any advice on getting ahead of the Instagram algorithm for regular posts? Seems like IG made some changes sometime in September and has been affecting smaller influencers and businesses. Any thoughts there about the Instagram algorithm? How to get ahead
Yeah, that's
kind of tricky
yeah.
one, isn't it, Max? What do you say?
I would say it's a tricky one, right? Because the API from Instagram, both Facebook and Instagram, but even more so for Instagram, changes quite regularly. They first introduced the business profile, then restricted what kind of data like you could access to, then the creator profiles, and then they're making more changes as we go. So unfortunately, I don't have like a specific tip on how to stay ahead of the curve for the algorithm changes, as even if you, I would say, working with Instagram, it's not like you will get a heads up like a couple of months before, etc. So you kind of like to figure out as we go. But I would say that we kind of like, that's why it's so important to also keep track and monitoring above your social media performance, right? If you're seeing any drop, to deep dive and get granular insight to try and understand what's going on, right? Staying ahead of the curve, unfortunately, not too sure it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one thing which can really help you to understand what kind of content is performing well is Socialbakers performance prediction, because there you can very easily see, not just for your own posts, but also for competitor and general industry posts, how certain content is performing. And if you then have the help of the AI to kind of like rate all the great content, you'll be much easier to see what works and what maybe doesn't work, and then learn from that and kind of like adjust your content and improve your overall strategy going forward.
Yeah, just one last bit of practical advice to add there. So you're saying that you saw it change in September and it's maybe affecting you now. So I would take a look at your region and other Instagram businesses, and to see if that's also affecting them, because it should, algorithm changes should have an impact on everyone slightly. So that way you can know for certainty whether this is affecting the region or the market in which you're operating, or if it's affecting just you, and you'll be able to know if it's something to do with your content or if it's the algorithm indeed. Just to summarize this section, so again, back to quarterly earnings from Facebook, it's been great in terms of also user growth, which again could explain the increase in ads reach. Interestingly, grew in every region, decreased slightly in North America. I thought that was interesting. Before we jump to the next section, so should we answer another question in the chat we have? So a question for B2B marketers. So if you are a B2B business, how would you use IG to reach other businesses? It's good, really good question. We are a B2B business.
So Mantas, how do we reach other businesses?
Well, I guess no matter if you're advertising on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatnot. So probably the people who you're targeting in those B2B businesses are also on those platforms. So it's a matter of figuring it out, of course, how to reach them on those platforms. And it's doable. If you set up your kind of targeting pretty narrowly, you'll be able to find them. But also it's about understanding that they're on those platforms on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, not because they want to do work related stuff, but because it's their free time. So you got to figure out a strategy in terms of content that is not about your business or anything kind of super hard work related. It has to be kind of lighter and fit into the context and the mood in which they're in when they're on those platforms. While on LinkedIn, then you can be a bit more kind of business related.
I think you made a really good point there as well, is that you need to understand the audience, right? So that's kind of like first step. You need to know who you're targeting. And I'm just going to share with you all the link to one of our latest audience reports, which will help people really to understand how to get started with really identifying who are you trying to target and what's the most effective way to target them.
Thanks for doing that. Great. This is always, this chart is always a hit. I don't know, Max, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, that's basically what we're seeing. Like, well, maybe for the audience that's seeing this chart for the first time, basically what we do is that we break down the two main platforms for Facebook and Instagram in three basically main metrics, and we look at the audience size. So basically, like how many people are on each of these platforms, how many content is being created by brand profiles, as well as how much engagement they're getting around this these posts, right? And very clearly at a global level, what we can see is that even though there's still a very large audience on Facebook and the brands are putting a lot of effort creating a lot of content, the amount of engagement, so the engagement on the social media engagement that they're getting from it is still very small compared to Instagram. So Instagram very much became the engagement platform, right? So echoing to what you just say, Mentas, like trying to get them engaged with something a bit more fun, a bit lighter. It seems that Instagram is actually a very good platform, to do so. I would say though that this here we're looking at worldwide or global numbers. This story will look slightly different depending on which Southeast Asia market that we look to. Like as I was mentioning before, if you were to do this in Vietnam, for example, Facebook would still have a much bigger role to play, as the audience and as well as the engagement still very much happen on that platform.
Yeah. So we're going to get to that data actually a little bit later in the webinar. I think what's also interesting is if you added another bubble here that showed referral traffic, I would bet that it would be reversed. You would have Facebook being this huge bubble and Instagram being a tiny bubble. And it's really about, I think the platforms are just a little bit different in terms of how people use them and how you as a marketer should approach them. Okay. Time spent. This one is, I can't explain this one. Help me explain it. Why does time shift towards the morning hours by 98%? I cannot kind of understand this one.
Tricky one, right? Like it seems like I was thinking maybe people have more time in the morning because they don't have to, as they're doing home office, they don't have to commute, they don't have to get to the office. So they're kind of like spending that extra half an hour or hour, depending on their phones and checking Facebook. But I don't know, how is it with you, Mentas and Max? Are you spending that 1 extra hour in the morning on Facebook?
Not for me, not on my end. Like maybe don't tell my boss, but since I'm working from home, that's probably like I'm taking more breaks during the day to actually check social media, but not really so much like spending a bigger part of my time in the morning. Actually, I would spend more time on social media while I'm commuting, I would say. So at least for me, so I definitely do not fit the trend. But it would be interesting to hear also what the audience think about that one, because I'm with Mentas. I can't really explain it at the moment.
Yeah, let us know, guys. Do you start checking your social media earlier nowadays? By like, especially at 5 a.m. Who checks social media at 5 a.m.?
That's crazy. All the
sleepless nights. It is kind of an anxious time, so I imagine people maybe have a tougher time sleeping. We compared Facebook and Instagram in this webinar a lot, but I think this is another chart that just shows that difference between the two platforms, and Instagram being sort of stable and Facebook having a huge peak during the beginning of pandemic and then a slight peak during the BLM protests. But something else to talk about here?
I think it can be really seen that that Facebook is has this massive spike in between February and April, really when the main pandemic COVID broke out. So it really seems like a lot of people were then kind of like jumping to Facebook to really engage, check the news, see what's going on. Maybe also check what's going on with their families and beloved ones, if they are not in direct relation with them. But then it's interesting as well that we see this massive drop, and I think like for September, the levels on the interaction levels on Facebook were even like lower than the whole last year. So we can really see people got maybe they got bored of checking the news so much, or maybe they know that their families are fine now. But we can really see this massive drop on the interactions there.
Right. Isn't it interesting how just again, so Facebook is so different. Like even if you think about the pandemic, I would have even guessed somewhat like, okay, there's so much attention on this that even people would have like went to Instagram to speak about this, but it's didn't really happen. It's more like uh Facebook was the platform where you checked in on the state of the world, and then on Instagram you escaped that state of the world in order to, think about nicer things. Uh, Getting a bit more granular into the formats. So one trend we want to speak about is live video here, and that's because it continues to be the most kind of engaging format for a long time now, since it's was pretty much introduced. But also there are things really changing in how people use Facebook Live video. So if you don't mind, I will just jump into the next chart where we look at the evolution of it. Amelie, do you want to maybe walk us through this chart?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, a lot of brands really shifted, or a lot of marketers shifted their strategies, and Facebook Lives got a really big hit,
Yeah.
or a really big spike in, like starting of April. And it I mean, while everyone was thinking, okay, this is now a new era, things are changing, it's never going to go back to normal or back to previous numbers, we can really see that marketers really applied live, and really got some good results from that. But the live videos really kind of dipped again after June, July. So I mean, obviously lives are taking quite an effort. I don't know, Mentos, maybe you can give some insights from the social bakers perspective as well here. But yeah, it really dipped again after.
Well, for us, maybe it didn't dip so much personally, just because we were doing live for the longest time now, just because it just brings so much engagement from the audience. Like so many, we would have this kind of a webinar style live video, and you just would get questions coming in and so forth. So I think we recognize that we just got to keep doing this, and so for us, there wasn't that much of a difference. But I understand that brands really started posting a lot more live content during March, April, because if all your production kind of capacity is taken away from you, if you're locked down in your home, there's really two things that you can do. You can do this kind of live broadcasts, or you can do podcasts, and both of them grew immensely during the pandemic. Uh, the only concern that I had, I was afraid that this is going to start kind of, um, you know, just you're going to lose some of these new live formats that businesses introduce, because it is kind of, you got to do it consistently to get the continued results, and it's a different kind of new format that maybe not many brands have experimented with, just because it's so long. Like it's 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes. But some brands did it. One brand that really I liked their live videos a lot was and Johnson's. And I mean, that's a brand that you wouldn't expect to do like a live conversation format, and they did it weekly, and I thought it was a great initiative.
Yeah,
um,
we have one good comment coming in here
Mhm.
from Fong as well, saying that people are using Facebook Live for gaming. So I think, Mantis, we will get back to gaming later on in the report, right, where we see that interactions
Yeah,
have
there's some
increased.
some stats on gaming, but it's a really good point, and I think it maybe brings us to the discussion around long form versus kind of short form video content. I think what also happened during the pandemic is that a lot of these, like for instance, sports, because there was not much happening, there was a lot of live streams that moved to Facebook, and also, if you remember, a couple of months ago we released a report on gaming, and there was a trend of actual sports people streaming their live gaming sessions on Facebook. So I think that it explains that there was a huge kind of boom in new Facebook live videos, although the chart that we showed previously is strictly for brands, so we know that businesses themselves stream more live videos. Sorry, I've been speaking for a lot.
Yeah, no, it's very surprising, I think, that to see that these, especially very long videos, so videos over 5 minutes, have achieved such a higher reach than even like the very short videos, which maybe then also means that the shorter videos not really seen, not really performing in the same way, and not really getting all
Right.
that.
Yeah, it's almost like a different format. Like a short video for me, it's more similar to maybe like how an image would work on social media. It has that like quick kind of scroll through um, behavior that's needed to consume a 6-second video. But for a 30-minute video, you're literally asking the person to stop what they're doing and immerse in that video and sit down and watch it. Like it's a different kind of format.
Mm. And I guess you also like if you have the long form video, like you're more committed, right? Because you see it's a like you see the minutes already, and then if you start it, you're kind of like you're following through with it.
Yeah, it actually brings us to the next point. So you can see in terms of interactions. So the longer the video, of course, no surprise, you get the more engagement that you get, and that's especially what you get on live content. You get tons of interactions just because people are, they've given their time to it. They're already participating. That's what we see on our live videos for sure. And I know it's not a format that everyone has cracked yet. So I wonder if any people in the audience have figured out how to do live video.
Max, well, how is your experience with the clients you're working with? Are they using live already, or?
It depends. I would say that, for example, in e-commerce, we've seen quite a good usage of live videos. Sometimes doing like live promotion events. We've seen like some brands doing it with influencers, for example, where they're going to run like during this big day of like single days, 11/11, or this other big promotional day, running live videos as they're going into that promotion. Even if it starts at like 10 p.m. at night or something, you will get crazy good engagement. Other industry is a bit more difficult, I would say, to like crack this live video format. So yeah, I would say not everyone has definitely like cracked the live video game yet.
Yeah.
I think then another really big one is probably like the whole entertainment industries, right? Where during the pandemic, we've seen like all the concerts go live, all the theaters, musicals, like, you've seen brands getting so creative and really, kind of giving people some entertainment from the comfort of their couches.
Yeah, that's something that reminds me. I need to point out, especially for the Singapore context. Here, the Singaporean government is actually very good at live videos. They did a lot of announcement on Facebook Live throughout this whole pandemic. So I'd say that's quite advanced for a government, that you don't see that everywhere in the world. So, and yeah, like someone put it out in the chat right now, live videos for elections. I guess we all been watching some part of a live feed in the past couple of weeks with the US election going. So that's also, but that also brings other challenge, right, in terms of like the everything that we've seen in the past years with the fake news on social media. So yeah, definitely interesting format.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's of course all the conferences that went live as well. Before we move to the next section, maybe we can answer one slightly more maybe difficult question to do with that. So the question is from Shafana, and she asks, or he, I'm sorry, I'm not, can't quite tell, but is it effective to measure with revenue if we want to use Instagram or Facebook ads? Because my boss sometimes asking me how much money that we'll get if we advertise our promotion on Facebook or Instagram. It's a brilliant question, and I think for many businesses that are starting to advertise, that's the uncertainty. But the way you can do it is you can approach it very carefully and tell your boss that, like, look, if we don't know what revenue is going to bring us, how about we take X amount of budget and find out. You essentially and then you set yourself a benchmark for what the costs are. But of course, you like the question whether you can do it. You can actually do it for sure, and it's a really easy way, a clear way of measuring revenue. You'll see you spend $200, you get 300 back in terms of ROI or something. That you'll be able to do for sure. moving into the discussion about the industries. So we mentioned e-commerce growing, for sure. It has been growing a lot, but maybe it's more interesting to see how it's divided between different parts of different industries and where it has actually grown and where it has decreased. Anything that kind of stands out here for you guys? So we're looking at where it increased on Instagram or Facebook, or where it decreased on Instagram or Facebook across industries.
I think an interesting one is to point out the travel industry, where we've seen a massive rise on Facebook. Probably a lot of people posting their kind of like requests, maybe some changes happen in their flights, maybe cancellations. So Facebook really being like the customer service channel almost, and this really big dip on Instagram, where you cannot travel. Maybe people are not interested that much in getting all that inspiration while they are sitting in their own apartments. So that's quite interesting, and it gives some indication of how the different channels are being used by the audience as well.
Yeah, travel being a really curious case, of course, NGO. Growing.
Yeah, we have someone from NGO in the audience, I think. So it would be interesting to hear what they, if they experience the same.
Right, and entertainment growing, but jumping into the region. So, Max, that's something that you mentioned here. There's stark differences between different parts of the region in which you're in, and you can really see where Instagram is actually picking up in some of those places year over year.
That one was interesting for me, because like you can definitely see that Instagram engagement rates is definitely growing in some of the markets. So like right from what I can catch, you can see that that's the case in Singapore, that's the case in Korea, as well as Thailand. So definitely increasing in terms of engagement for these markets as well. So it's definitely going to be a growing platform across the region as well when it comes to like brand engagement.
And last but not least, we wanted to just touch on what is happening with influencer marketing right now. And it's just one key stat that we have to look at, and that's how many sponsored posts are we really seeing in the market right now, which is what this chart is looking at. And the question for me is like, how's this going to look in Q4 when you have all the holiday campaigns? Because that's where it really picked up last year. What's your prediction, guys? Are we going to see influencer marketing pick up?
Well, in general, we've seen the trend towards micro influencers. So I think within the influencer space, there's some shifts that are happening. I think definitely we will see another hook coming there for the Q4. I don't think it's going to be as high as in 2019, because just in general we've seen that the levels right now are even much lower than they've been last year. So we've seen even like in September already that it was increasing, whereas now I think the figures are not on the chart yet, but the September figures are already much lower than they've been last year. So I think it's not gonna go as steep, and especially with micro influencers increasingly on the rise. The kind of like the way that influencers are being used are a bit different. I don't know, Max, what's your experience?
Honestly, I don't have a clear-cut answer on that one. I've been talking to a lot of people about influencer marketing and what were their plans among our clients for the upcoming months, and it seems that people are not sure, to be honest. Like, should they engage in influencer marketing? Is this still worth investing in influencer marketing? Also, with some lockdown in some of the markets, like what can they actually do with influencer marketing? So I would say I would agree that definitely it might spike up a little bit compared to like these past few months, but I don't see it coming near where it was in September 2019. And it's kind of crazy, right? When I think I remember this stats like that the influencer marketing industry was expected to reach 10 billion. We're expected to be at $10 billion USD by the end of 2020. I honestly don't think we're going to reach that level, as it's these past few months definitely put a dent in the influencer marketing business.
Yeah, Gabriel has a good comment stating that there's still some key issues to kind of resolve. I do not see a spike this year that with transparency on influencers reporting being highlighted this year, and many marketers are still not adopting a data-driven approach to effectively track and monitor influencer performance. So there's still some things to clean up in that area before we can really start confidently using influencers, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think again here, Socialbakers platform really helps to identify the influencers that work within your sphere. You can kind of like listen to what's going on in the market generally and identify who are the people that are really influencing your industry and the topics that you're interested in, and identify what kind of influencers fit with your values, because I think that's also a really big thing, especially with all the societal changes that we've seen this year as well, with Black Lives Matter and things like that. It's also kind of like very important that the influencers you're working with are aligned with your brand values.
Yeah. Okay. So before we run out of time, I just want to leave a little bit of space for Q&A. So I'm going to jump ahead and maybe just to summarize the key points from this webinar. So one to start with is that I think Q3 has proved that advertisers are not afraid to spend, and they probably will spend more in the next quarter. So if you want to remain competitive in the industry, I think you got to set budget aside for digital spend. The second point is that I think what this quarter has proved is just that how resilient social media channels are to any kind of big market changes. So I think if you're working in the space, you can relax a little bit. Like this area is staying, and we are going to be spending more here. Reach, I think, is an important point to make. Is that's something that is growing, and it shows increasingly kind of more users. Let me rewind that back. I think it shows that people are much more inclined to interact with ads, and there's more users on the platforms. And the last point is that what you just said, Amelie, about the influencer marketing is that we will just have to maybe wait a little bit and see where it takes us. And micro influencers potentially could be the way that this area grows in the next quarter. But without further ado, I just want to encourage everyone to get the full report that has all these data points and a lot more, so you can have it for reference later. And of course, if you need regional data, we'll get it to you. Absolutely. Feel free to get in touch. And well, thank you. And I think I want to open the floor to a Q&A session. We have a couple of minutes left. We're nearly out of time, but we want to answer. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Yeah, I don't know, Mantis, what are your predictions for, Socialbakers Q4? Do you have anything to go with?
Yeah, well, we had a really kind of steep September and October. So we thought that maybe like we're not going to be able to sustain that trend in November. But currently, the way that November has started in the numbers, it looks pretty great, like in terms of traffic and interactions. So I am optimistic that, through November, we'll be able to keep that momentum. And holidays for the B2B sector is a bit more interesting. It's not the same as the B2C sector. So we do tend to see a slowdown towards sort of the second half of December a little bit. But it's overall looking really optimistic. I think everyone in the team is feeling that way.
Nice.
Okay.
We have one question coming in from Fong again. Can I have your opinions on automated ad campaign on Facebook?
I personally never used it, so I cannot quite comment, but it's a good question, and I will ask our campaign managers to see what they think. Maybe we can do a post about it on our social channels and answer your question.
Yeah, and then we have Sayes again commenting on the influencer marketing discussion that Gabriel started, saying that I guess it also depends on the kind of data that you're after. Unlike other ad forms, influencers are not usually able to track ROI. So understandably, the argument to invest more in KOLs would also not be as strong compared to, say, programmatic.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Max.
No, you're Max. The floor is yours. I've spoken enough.
Yeah, I would say like definitely tracking influencers' performance is always the main challenge that brands tells us, right? Like usually the main metrics they're interested in are usually private metrics, such as like how many reach or how many story views on Instagram or that kind of things, which are all private metrics. And what we're seeing in the industry is really like a lack of transparency still, and like brands struggling to get concrete answers from not all influencers but some influencers, which creates kind of like this like what's mentioned just now in the comments. It's kind of like like brands being afraid to sometimes engage with influencers because they can't evaluate what would be the results. And also that's actually was the starting point of what we built at Socialbakers, right? The ability to ask for influencers to get access to all of their product insights so they can share that with brands while remaining in control of all of their social media channels. And yeah, hopefully we can play our role to help brands solve that issue, but it's definitely a valid point. And I would say this is also why it's sometimes difficult to prove the ROI of influencer marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And also just a reminder for people to join the event because we will have, I think, even 2 speakers from an influencer marketing agency. So I think it'd be interesting if you were curious about this topic, you'd be able to catch more there. More questions coming in. Why Instagram and Facebook followers continue to decline? Whether there's a need for follower ads? Should we resume the ads when we used to run them to get more followers? What are your feelings here?
I'm not sure actually. I would like. Are you seeing that as a trend as well? That you're struggling to keep your followers in terms of at Socialbakers? I think it really depends on your content, right?
Yeah, we're certainly on Instagram. It's for us there. We don't have that challenge, but I can see that challenge on Facebook a little bit because and it's not just our business. I think it's many businesses struggle with the problem of the Facebook audiences being a bit too kind of messy. Like when we started growing in Facebook audiences, it was just the start of social media marketing. And so what we really did along with everyone else is just you were advertising for like campaigns. You wanted everyone to follow your business. That was the key metric. Like how many people do like my page? I mean, it wasn't called a page; it was just a profile at the time, I guess. And what it created is kind of an audience that has liked your page once and then never interacted with it. And I think maybe some businesses wouldn't even be so sad to lose some of the followers if it would give them a more kind of a solid audience that they can work with. You don't have that problem on Instagram actually, because the audience building was done a bit more. We knew social media a little bit better when we did that. My answer. I don't know if it helps.
It's tricky because followers is kind of a vanity metric, right? You can have so many followers, but as you said, Mantas, if they liked your page once and then they never return again, it doesn't really help that much with your social effectiveness.
Yeah. So I would be very careful about running ads just for followers. It's more questions. If more people are increasingly active on social media and as a result interacting with more ads, shouldn't the CPCs be getting cheaper and not increasing? Brilliant question. What else is growing also with the CPCs and also people interacting with more ads is the amount of people that want to advertise to those people, right? I think
yeah, it seems like people, it might be related as well as people are more likely to click on those ads. And that's why the, overall the CPC is increasing still. Or I don't know, Max, what do you say?
I think that we saw a dip, right, in the CPC, and that's probably why, like you say, like in terms of supply and demand, people kind of like froze for a while and said, okay, what we're gonna do, and then that caused the CPC to decrease for everyone that was still advertising on the social media platform. But we also see that CPC like going up again in the last couple of months, or like 3-4 months already, actually, as advertisers are like starting to like trying to reach to more people, so they're spending more money. So that will bring everyone CPC up. Obviously, if we were to like break down that by vertical, we probably see some clear differences, like the travel industry, for example. But overall, if more brands are trying to advertise, even though that it's true that more people are on the social media, if brands are spending more, we expect the CPC to actually go up. But as we say, it's still cheaper than what it was last year, so still an opportunity.
Yeah, although I don't know if that's going to be the case in Q4. Like, when if the brands really get super competitive and they really try to do everything they can to close 2020 in green zone, they probably will spend quite a lot on social media.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I think we're almost 8 minutes over time, so I'm really sorry for that. We kind of carved out a bit of time from your day, but also thanks everyone for joining. It's really nice to have such an active audience and with so many questions that we need to follow up on. And of course, we need to get you the regional data for everyone who asked.
Reach out to me.
So thank you for joining, and as well, Amelie and Max, thanks for this conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
thanks,
so much.
Manas.
Thanks everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks everyone. Have a nice end of your day.